A major public health problem worldwide are burns. According to statistics, in Mexico at least 200,000 people suffer burns per year, and almost 2,000 die from them. Although most of these injuries could be avoided with fire management education or good job safety, the reality is that healing process reaches high costs, is painful, and above all, inaccessible to most people. The final cost of treating these injuries is approximately $5,000, which is equivalent to nearly 20,000 minimum wages in Mexico. These types of burns can be caused by radiation, mechanical, thermal, or electrical energies.
From all the cases mentioned before, the ones caused by electricity are the most dangerous and represent 20 to 25% of burn injuries. And even though electricity isn't the main cause of burns, Mexico and a lot of third world countries are extremely exposed to this source, literally. The electrical system in these nations tends to be disorganized and tremendously near to people's houses.
Primero que nada, quería preguntarte de qué grado fue la quemadura que tuviste.
Tuve lesiones de segundo y tercer grado.
Ok. ¿Y podrías contarme un poco sobre cómo fue el origen de esta quemadura?
Sí, estaba cocinando con una olla de presión que tenía el empaque en malas condiciones, entonces en algún momento, pues bueno, la olla se abre, yo estoy cerca y a mí me alcanza el vapor. A mí lo que me quemó fue el vapor. Y tengo que llegar con la clínica, con médico familiar para que me dé el pase a la atención especializada. Entonces desde ahí me lastiman porque me quitan el vendaje y pues me vuelven a lastimar, ¿no? Entonces a un cirujano plástico de confianza y le llamo a él. Entonces le dije, oye, me voy a Monterrey o me atiendes o qué. Entonces él me dice cómo me puedo empezar a hacer las curaciones. Me recomienda comprar unos parches y por eso te decía que eran caros, porque yo empiezo a ponerme esos parches. Hay unos parches dermatológicos especiales que están embebidos de factor de crecimiento. Entonces yo compraba esos, pero pues eran 600 pesos diarios de tratamiento, ¿no? Entonces yo sola, con ayuda de él, así por videollamada, empezamos, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces compro esos parches, pero esos parches, el más grande que encontré, te estoy hablando de hace 10 años, costaban 600 pesos.
Ujú.
Entonces el más grande que encontré medía como unos, ¿qué serían? Como unos 12 centímetros, me parece, era como un tamaño de una gasa.
Ok.
¿Sí? Yo los usaba en lugar de la gasa, porque lo que me pusieron primero fue una gasa, y entonces con el mismo exudado del líquido intracelular, pues se pega y después de eso le ponen una venda, entonces se pega, de manera que es terrible para el paciente porque cuando lo tienes que quitar con mucho cuidado y con agua estéril, ¿sí? Y a mí lo que me hicieron en el Seguro Social para revisarme, pues fue nada más jalar la gasa. Donde me puse la gasa, mira, no se alcanza a ver, no se alcanza a ver, pero bueno, sé
Se
cómo.
alcanza a ver se alcanza a ver
Sí.
un poco de coloración.
Esta región, ¿sí? Me cubrió
Sí.
la gasa, esta no. Entonces aquí es donde tengo la cicatriz más grande. Esto casi no se
Ok.
nota, ¿sí?
Ajá.
Pero es que si no, pues eran 1200 diarios, ¿no? Entonces dije, ni modo, pues un pedacito, ¿no?
Sí.
Metros.
Uy.
Yo al mes y medio tenía regeneración y función completa,
Wow.
¿sí?
Wow.
Fue increíble, increíble, ¿sí? O sea, yo
Wow.
estaba así, súper bien. Y entonces siempre lo pensé porque en algún momento también yo di la materia de biomateriales, ¿no? Entonces,
Ujú.
sé de esto de las pieles sintéticas y todo, y les decía eso a los muchachos. Digo, miren, la diferencia entre un paciente con una quemadura de tercer grado que hubiera quedado con disfunción, porque empiezas a estimular más que nada la producción de colágeno y entonces ya no tienes la misma conexión, la misma elasticidad y obviamente vas a perder función, ¿sí?
Sí.
Estos pacientes tardan un año en recuperarse y no recuperan del todo la movilidad, quedan cicatrices, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? Entonces les digo, Chihuahua, desafortunadamente la diferencia entre tener recursos o no tenerlos, ¿no?
Sí,
Entonces, no, ahorita el servicio médico, bueno, en ese momento, y no creo que haya cambiado mucho, no cuentan con este tipo de alternativas porque aceleras el proceso, le das una mejor atención al paciente, mejor calidad de vida, ¿no? Sí,
ok.
sí, sí, yo
Oye,
terminé súper bien, o sea, digo, fuera de eso, que es un pedazo
qué bueno.
medio se nota, y es porque ya no
Ujú.
alcanzó el parche, ¿no? O sea, se nota la diferencia. Les digo que soy el control positivo, o sea, yo tengo el control negativo aquí, ¿no? Se nota exactamente la función de estos compuestos, porque en ese pedazo, o sea, todo esto que fue inicialmente, esta parte fue una quemadura de segundo grado, pero todo esto fue de tercer grado. Entonces, se nota la diferencia, donde sí recibí el tratamiento y donde ya no me alcanzaba, ¿no?
Listening to previous views and experience, we believe that our proposal will be able to cover and attack more than one problem mentioned here, as this could be a cheaper and more effective treatment than others on the market today. You may wonder how we could find an answer to such a great need. Any help to solve this problem can make a big difference, and putting these words in evidence, the answer is in the worms of skill, or rather in the fiber of their cocoons.
Among all the insects that are capable to produce silk, only a few are used for large-scale productions. Some examples are Adathenea milita or Philosamina ricini. This represents only the 10% of production, while the 90% comes from Bombyx mori silk, which will be the silk on which we will base our proposal. The cocoon of the Bombyx mori is made of a single continuous fiber, consisting of two main parts, fibrin and sericin.
The problem is that sericin, with the amount that comes in silk, can cause adverse reactions, such as hypersensitivity. You can do a well-known process like degumming to separate this part of the fiber. This process is long and time-consuming, as it involves sodium carbonate to all silk.
So, what better than to combine a problem with a process constantly used in a biomaterial highly recognized worldwide? Making recombinant fibrin is our first step to the solution. However, fibrin has already been made recombinant not long ago. So, how could this innovation process be improved? The answer lies in our own problem. If we want to treat third-degree burns, we must be able to make a biomaterial, not only that is compatible with the body, but even helps the healing process, as one more treatment. All this in a unique biomaterial. For this, we'll make use of growth factors, such as BEGF and PDGF. To define what a growth factor are, we will use the definition of researchers William Oldstone, Douglas Levitt, and Matteo Barcalo, who define them as secrete molecules that promote or inhibit mitosis or affect cell differentiation.
The first factor we are going to talk about is a BEGF. This growth factor has properties such as angiogenesis, having a mitogenic factor in endothelial cells, promoting cell migration. On the other hand, the PDGF factor has the property of being multifunctional. They are especially mitogens as well chemoattractants for target cells such as fibroblasts. So these type of factors are really important because of the process of how our skin works. So the skin provides a life protective barrier between the body and external environment against physical damage. It is composed by three main layers. Epidermis, which is the more external layer of your skin, contains multiple immune cells like keratinocytes, melanocytes, among others. Then the dermis, which is the second layer and contains cells like fibroblasts and is the place where all the functions like sweating, feeling, and also blood circulation is done. Also regulates cytokine and growth factors functions, which is important. Finally, the hypodermis, or also known as the subcutaneous layer, where all the fatty and adipose tissue is. When the skin is damaged on a superficial layer without penetrating the dermis, the wound edges come together and are able to regenerate tissue, leaving minimum scar. However, whenever the skin is penetrated to the dermis or even deeper layers, 5 stages occur. First of all, hemostasis includes cutaneous neurogenic inflammation and hemostasis. Platelets are aggregated to the affected area and form a platelet plug, which is further reinforced by a protein mesh of fibrin to form a loose blood clot that prevents further blood loss. Second of all, inflammation. The damaged tissue causes the release of cells like chemokines, cytokines, which recruit immune cells like neutrophils and macrophages to the area and removes microbes and also particles through phagocytosis. Also, the body releases histamine and substance P, which triggers the vasodilatation and increases the permeability of blood vessels. The cytokines and growth factors like PDGF, TGF, and also BEGF are released also on this stage, where they interact with endothelial cells, promoting neutrophil activation, pathogen detection, trapping, and modulation of innate and adaptive immune responses. Second, also known as proliferation epithelialization, the clot dries and forms a scab. Fibroblasts enter the wound and release the collagen to strengthen the clot. The endothelial cells start to proliferate and injured blood vessels start regrowing, forming a delicate mesh known as the granulation tissue. Third, maturation and remodeling phase. The scab slots off. Collagen fibers become more organized and fewer fibroblasts are present. The blood vessels are restored to normal. Then fibrosis and fibroblastia. The fibroblasts in the dermis proliferate and secrete collagen, which assemble to collagen bundles which have high tensile strength and acts as a extracellular scaffolding. Scar tissue is formed and has denser arrangement of collagen fibers and reduced elasticity of normal skin. Finally, the fibroblasts degrade old or misshapen collagen from the injury. Then the myofibroblasts produce contractile proteins within the cell. So when these cells tighten, they pull up those proteins, they reduce the space between them, and ultimately they pull the edges to the wound together. If healing has been delayed because of an infection or the presence of extensive tissue debris, as in burn wounds, connective tissue remodeling overruns matrix degradation. As a result of excessive amounts of badly oriented collagen may be laid down, thus causing permanent scar, making a key component the early treatment. And even though burns are one of the most common incidents on every country, most of the patients do not always receive the correct treatment to treat the scarring. The success of the wound healing process depends not on the earlier treatment, but also on the interventions of growth factors, cytokines, and chemokines. They trigger cells to divide, grow, and produce proteins such as collagen, which we have seen is the most important building block of skin.
But our team did not want to stop at this step. We asked ourselves, what else could do in the future to get the most out of the product? In the end, after much discussion, we came to the conclusion that the best thing would be to make a biofilm with these characteristics. This due to the use that current given to the pig skin. You may wonder, why pig skin? Well, the answer is that it's used as a protector for burns. It is used as a temporary graft to protect wounds from infection.
The idea is that our biofilm made with fibrin has a great biocompatibility with the patient and at the same time has a function like that of pig skin, with the great addition that it will help healing through these growth factors. Below, we will detail the genetic process to achieve this recombinant fibrin.
To make the in silico design, we decided to divide our whole process into two small steps. The first one being identifying problems that may occur within our goal of producing recombinant fibrin and growth factors. And the main issue was just beneath our noses. The most famous chassis used in synthetic biology equals the bacteria E. coli was not going to be suitable to make these molecules because our substances of interest are produced by eukaryotic cells. It's important to remember that bacteria are prokaryotic cells and that they do not have the right machinery to fold and splice proteins. In fact, in 2021, Tanrith et al. Proposed a protocol of refolding and purification of the recombinant cucinase of Bombyx mori, but it required lots of reactants and time. With all of this in mind, we decided to use E. coli just as cloning vectors, and to express our proteins, we would use Saccharomyces cerevisiae. The second step in our project was to design the plasmids where we would incorporate these proteins we wanted to produce. To do this, it was important to design one that would work in both organisms, had the selection markers for the bacteria and the yeasts, an origin of replication for the bacteria, and our genes of interest. In addition to this, promoters, UDR regions, and terminators should be added as well. Because of the fact that we had a lot of genes to express, we decided to make 4 separate plasmids, each one with one specific biobrick, in order to not compromise the metabolism and life of our cells. One corresponded to the light chain of fibrin, other had both of the parts of the heavy chain of fibrin, Another one had the PDGF factor, and lastly, one with the VEGF factor. Having 4 different plasmids meant that we should have 4 separate strains of yeast and bacteria to produce our project. But it's not going to be a problem because the E. coli DH5 alpha and Saccharomyces cerevisiae LAS have excellent transformation rates. So basically, we had to design a simple yet effective linear and constitutive GM circuits that are shown now on screen. To do this, we use as backbone this plasmid, which has the beta-lactamase resistant gene. Afterwards, we chose to use the ADH1 constitutive yeast promoter in our plasmids because it's a strong promoter, meaning it will theoretically have a great expression rate. By adding this type of promoter, we would assure that our extrachromosal part would express in the yeast. Instead of using a simple ribosome binding sequence, we decided to use this dual UTR region to maintain an exceptional balance between transcription and translation, as well as improving protein expression. Regarding the genes of interest, the sequence for fibrin light chain was directly downloaded from the database NCBI, whereas the heavy chain, the VEGF and PDGF factor sequences were obtained from the biobricks shown. It's important to note that in the case of the heavy chain of the fibrin, we had to use silva-fusion prefix and suffix to allow in-frame cloning of the protein domain. Finally, we added the ADH1 yeast terminator.
Boards have great impact in the life of every patient, from great psychological struggles to spend thousands of dollars on treatments. BioTec Film aims to help patients as a basic treatment accessible to all that can allow them to live their healing process in a non-invasive, faster, and also cheaper way.